you agree that us elders folks remember a time when there were at least a lot more good movies per capita than there are now? It just seems you get stung every 2 out of 3 times.
I think what happens is there's a real, the old days, the studio system, it was run by people who actually liked movies.
That's right.
They were self-made men. They came up with very little education, but they loved movies and they loved artists and they wanted to bring with them the great artists. There was this great exodus from Germany in the 30s of, you know, and then there was Faulkner writing there, and there was Fitzgerald writing, and the word meant something. Literature meant something. In fact, Broadway, I mean, was really kind of the Class A world, and film was a poor relation. Actors went off to do a movie, well, which we didn't really talk about. Then I go back on Broadway and do my Macbeth or whatever. And I think what we have now is we've got the studios are run by guys with business degrees who are really only doing, we're pre-selling territories. Right. And that's how you get a movie. I've talked about this before, but you get a really interesting, original piece of modern literature like Bonfire of the Vanities, which they cast by pre-selling to an imagined audience. Well, Bruce Willis brings in this audience, Tom Hanks brings in this audience, Morgan Freeman brings in this audience, and they don't care anymore whether they're serving the author's intentions. And I think that really does a disservice to the audience, who really doesn't care so much about stars. They want to see a story well told for their $7.
Has Tom Wolfe been heard from? I just haven't, if he was, I missed it. But the catastrophe of what they did.
I think he's hiding under a rock
book,
somewhere until the whole thing, it's not his fault.
Certainly not, no. Writers are still shat upon in Hollywood, I hear, even though for decades people, you know, Raymond Chandler have written, these guys with, you know, the dollar signs in their eyes and the morals of a goat like to produce.
Well, I actually heard about an agent actually sitting in a meeting with a studio, and a writer had come, a huge bestseller. They're going to talk about, you know, they just bought the book. And the head of this studio said, with a writer sitting right there in the room, said, love the title, love part of the concept, and we'll take it from there. So the idea is they don't care, and here's this wonderful book. That's, and I just think that the American public really is getting tired of that, and that Hollywood would do well to serve the literature, to serve the language, and let the people with the ideas who are writing. There's a lot of good books around there, and better movies could be made out of them.
And there actually was a time when there were scripts that were fun to read as scripts. I mean, you could almost listen to All About Eve, not to detract from it in any way.
But see, now they don't care.
You could listen to it almost on the radio and like as much, because there's such a good written story there.
And the problem, I think, in that regard is MTV, because the audience now is used to watching things that are interesting enough of themselves but have no connecting tissue. So movies now, particularly the ones really aimed at a commercial audience, are just, we take events and string them together, but we forget about logic and character development and through line and spine and all those things that are traditionally the backbone of good scripts.